The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the polished floor of Albright Animal Care, a clinic that bore the gentle marks of time and dedication. Dr. Arthur Albright, a man whose silver hair and kind eyes spoke of a long career spent tending to the animal companions of Northwood, meticulously arranged his instruments on a sterile tray. His movements were economical, precise, a quiet ballet honed over decades. The clinic was spotless, orderly, yet held a certain old-world charm, with framed commendations sharing wall space with faded photographs of past patients. Joyful dogs, regal cats, even a grateful-looking parrot. A sleek black limousine idled outside, its engine a low purr against the town's usual quiet. Inside, Mrs. Vanderbilt, a woman whose diamonds sparkled even in the clinic's muted light, was collecting her prize-winning poodle, Fifi, after a routine grooming session. "Absolutely pristine, Doctor," Mrs. Vanderbilt declared, examining Fifi's perfectly coiffed fur. "As always, you truly have a gift. Though, between us, Fifi was rather listless this morning. Are you quite sure her vitamin supplements are optimal?" Dr. Arthur offered a gentle, professional smile. "Fifi is in peak condition, Mrs. Vanderbilt. Perhaps she was simply anticipating her spa day with a little too much excitement." He handed over a small, elegantly packaged vial. "These are the same high-grade supplements we always provide. She's a picture of health." Mrs. Vanderbilt paid the considerable bill without a glance, her attention already drifting to her next social engagement. "Very well. Until next month, Doctor." With a swish of expensive fabric, she and Fifi were gone, leaving behind the faint scent of designer perfume and a silence that suddenly felt heavier. Dr. Arthur watched the limousine glide away. He ran a hand over his tired eyes. Such encounters were common, a parade of pampered pets and their affluent owners. He was respected, well compensated, a pillar of the veterinary community, yet as he turned back to the quiet of his clinic, the meticulously ordered shelves and the empty examination table seemed to echo a subtle solitude, a life filled with the care of others' companions, but perhaps missing a deeper connection of his own. He picked up a worn textbook, its pages soft with use, the knowledge within a familiar comfort against the unspoken loneliness that sometimes settled in the late afternoon. The clinic was now hushed, the only sounds the gentle hum of the refrigerator storing vaccines and the rhythmic tick-tock of a grandfather clock in the waiting area. Dr. Elias Thorne, a man whose face was a roadmap of experience and quiet sorrow, sat at his mahogany desk. The surface was clear save for a meticulously organized appointment book and a single silver-framed photograph. He wasn't looking at it, not directly, but its presence was a constant, silent companion. He carefully cleaned his spectacles, the late afternoon light catching the weariness in his eyes. He had just finished a complex surgery on a farmer's aging collie, a procedure that demanded all his skill and concentration. The dog would live, another small victory in a long line of them, yet the victories rarely seemed to fill the quiet spaces in his life. He rose and walked to a window overlooking a small, well-tended garden at the back of the clinic. A robin was pecking at the ground. It was a peaceful scene, but for Dr. Elias, peace often came intertwined with a profound sense of solitude. His hands, so skilled and steady when dealing with his patients, clenched slightly. Years ago, this clinic had echoed with more than just the sounds of animals. There had been laughter, a lighter, warmer presence. Now the quiet was a familiar cloak, one he wore with a practiced resignation. He turned from the window, his gaze briefly snagging on the silver frame. A woman's smiling face, bright and full of life, looked out from the photograph. He allowed himself a fleeting second to trace the outline of her cheek on the cool glass before his professional mask settled firmly back into place. There were still records to update, cages to check. The work was a solace, a purpose. He often thought that animals, in their silent understanding, were far simpler companions than people. They asked for little beyond care, and offered an uncomplicated affection he found increasingly rare in the human world. The bell above the clinic door chimed, a surprisingly sharp sound in the prevailing quiet. Dr. Elias looked up from his notes, expecting perhaps a late pickup or a last-minute appointment. Instead, framed in the doorway, stood a small girl, no older than 7 or 8. Her clothes were clean but well worn, a patch visible on the knee of her faded jeans. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her eyes, wide and luminous, were fixed on him with an expression of desperate hope. Clutched tightly to her chest, nestled in the crook of her arm as if it were the most precious treasure in the world, was a tiny bundle of orange fur. It was a kitten, so small it seemed to disappear into the girl's embrace. Its breathing was shallow, almost imperceptible, and its head lolled limply. The girl, Maya, took a hesitant step into the clinic, her worn sneakers silent on the polished floor. "Please," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Please, mister. It's Ginger. He's not moving much." Dr. Elias rose slowly, his earlier weariness momentarily forgotten. He motioned her towards the examination room. "Come in, child. Let's have a look at Ginger." His voice was gentle, devoid of the formal tone he sometimes used with wealthier clients. He saw the raw fear in her eyes, the way her small hands protected the tiny animal. This wasn't a pet brought in for a routine checkup. This was a lifeline. Maya scurried to the stainless steel examination table, carefully, almost reverently, placing the kitten down. Ginger was a pitiful sight. His fur was dull, his tiny body alarmingly still. A faint, raspy sound escaped his chest with each labored breath. Maya's lower lip quivered, but she blinked back tears, her gaze never leaving her stricken companion. She stood on tiptoe, her small hands gripping the edge of the cold metal table, her entire being focused on the fragile life before them. The vast sterile room seemed to dwarf the small girl and her even smaller friend, highlighting their vulnerability. Dr. Elias gently palpated Ginger's tiny frame, his experienced fingers searching for clues. The kitten was severely dehydrated and worryingly cold. "He's very sick, Maya," he said softly, his gaze meeting hers. "We need to try and warm him up and get some fluids into him right away." He moved with quiet efficiency, preparing a warming pad and a tiny syringe with electrolytes. Maya watched his every move, her knuckles white where she gripped the table. Will he be okay?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "I'll do everything I can, little one," Dr. Elias assured her, his voice kind but honest. As he worked, he asked her simple questions about Ginger, how long she'd had him, what he usually ate. Maya answered in monosyllables, her focus entirely on the frail kitten. After what felt like an eternity to Maya, Ginger seemed to respond slightly to the warmth and fluids. A tiny, almost imperceptible twitch of his ear, a slight deepening of his breath. Dr. Elias continued his examination, carefully checking the kitten's gums and listening to his heart with a miniature stethoscope. As he gently turned Ginger over, something fell from the folds of the worn blanket Maya had wrapped him in. It was a piece of paper, folded multiple times. Maya quickly bent to retrieve it, her cheeks flushing. This is for you," she said, holding it out to Dr. Elias with a trembling hand. "It's all I have, for helping Ginger." Dr. Elias paused, his brow furrowing slightly. He took the offered paper. It was a child's drawing, rendered in crayon, on a slightly crumpled piece of lined school paper. It depicted a bright orange cat, much like Ginger, but this cat was vibrant and playful, chasing a butterfly. Around the drawn cat's neck was a crudely but clearly depicted collar, a simple band with a small, distinctively shaped silver charm hanging from it, a tiny crescent moon. Dr. Elias stared at the drawing, a strange feeling prickling at the back of his neck. The drawing was charming in its childish simplicity, but it was the collar that held his attention. He looked from the drawing to the barely breathing kitten on the table, then back to the drawing. His mind, usually so focused on the medical task at hand, suddenly felt a jolt, a flicker of a memory long buried. He recognized that moon charm, or one hauntingly like it. If you believe that a small act of compassion can change the world, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our future stories. Dr. Elias's breath hitched. He carefully placed the drawing on the counter, his gaze distant. The image of the crescent moon charm transported him back over 20 years. He saw a different orange cat, a boisterous, loving creature named Marmalade, who had been his constant companion during his early, more challenging years as a veterinarian. And he saw Eleanor, his late wife, her hands deftly fastening a small silver crescent moon charm onto Marmalade's collar, a charm she had found in an antique shop, one she said was for good luck and happy adventures. Marmalade had adored that charm, batting at it playfully. The memory was so vivid, so sharp, it was almost painful. Marmalade had disappeared one spring afternoon, vanishing without a trace, leaving a void in their lives that had never truly healed. They had searched for weeks, put up posters, knocked on doors. Eleanor had been heartbroken. He had buried his own grief in work, but the absence of his furry friend and the memory of Eleanor's sadness had lingered. He looked at Maya, her small face etched with worry for Ginger. He looked at the drawing again. It couldn't be, could it? A coincidence? The details were too specific. The crescent moon charm in the drawing was identical to the one he remembered so clearly. "Maya," he began, his voice slightly hoarse, "this drawing, this collar with the moon, where did you see a cat with a collar like this?" Maya bit her lip, looking down at Ginger, who seemed to be breathing a little easier now. It's from a story my grandma tells me, about a special cat, a lucky cat. She said he wore a moon like that. She said Ginger reminded her of that cat." Dr. Elias felt a tremor pass through him. His gaze drifted to the silver-framed photograph on his desk, the one of Eleanor. She had loved telling stories, and she had adored Marmalade. The connection felt tenuous, improbable, yet undeniably potent. He gently stroked Ginger's tiny head. The kitten was weak, but there was a flicker of fight in him, a resilience that reminded him so much of Marmalade. "What was the biggest lesson your pet has ever taught you? Tell us in the comments below." "Your grandma," Dr. Elias said, his voice softer now, a new urgency in it. "Does she live nearby, Maya? I'd very much like to talk to her if that's all right." He needed to understand. This couldn't just be a flight of fancy. The details were too precise, too personal. Maya nodded shyly. "She's at home. We live just down a few streets past the old bakery." She pointed vaguely. "She's not well, though. Her legs hurt her a lot." Dr. Elias made a quick decision. Ginger was stable for the moment, resting on the warming pad, his breathing still shallow but more regular. "All right, Maya. I think Ginger needs to stay here for a little while, where I can keep a close eye on him. But I'd like to walk you home and perhaps say hello to your grandma. Would that be okay?" A flicker of relief crossed Maya's face at the news that Ginger would be cared for. "Yes, please," she said. As they walked the short distance through the quiet late-afternoon streets, Dr. Elias learned more about Maya. She lived alone with her grandmother, Martha. Her parents were gone, a fact she stated with a child's simple acceptance of a difficult truth. Ginger had appeared on their doorstep a few weeks ago, a tiny, stray ball of fluff, and had quickly become Maya's constant companion, her confidant. "He sleeps on my bed," Maya explained, her voice full of affection. "And he purrs really loud when I tell him stories." They arrived at a small, slightly run-down cottage with a porch that sagged a little on one side. An elderly woman with kind, tired eyes and silver hair, pulled into a neat bun, sat in a rocking chair, a knitted blanket over her lap. This was Martha. "Grandma, this is Dr. Elias," Maya announced. "He's helping Ginger." Martha offered a warm, if weary, smile. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Doctor. Maya has been so worried. That little kitten means the world to her." Dr. Elias returned the smile. "He's a fighter, that little one. Maya, perhaps you could fetch me a glass of water. And then you can sit with Ginger for a bit longer at the clinic before we close." As Maya scampered inside, Dr. Elias turned to Martha, the child's drawing still in his hand. "Mrs. Peterson," he began gently, "Maya showed me this drawing. She said you tell her stories about a cat with a collar like this, a crescent moon." Martha's eyes, which had been focused on the doctor, with polite attention, suddenly sharpened. A look of profound recognition, mixed with an old sadness, flickered across her face. She reached out a slightly trembling hand for the drawing. "Oh, my dear," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. That's a story from a long, long time ago, about a cat named Marmalade." Elias felt his heart quicken. "Marmalade," he repeated, scarcely believing it. "My wife, Eleanor, and we had an orange cat named Marmalade. He wore a collar just like this. He disappeared many years ago." Martha's eyes widened further, tears welling. "Eleanor Thorne?" she asked, her voice trembling. "The kind woman who used to volunteer at the old library. She gave my daughter Sarah, Maya's mother, that little charm. For her own cat, a beautiful orange tabby she also named Marmalade, after hearing Eleanor's stories of her own beloved pet. Sarah treasured that charm. The pieces began to click into place, forming a tapestry of shared history and interwoven lives. Eleanor, in her quiet way, had touched so many. Martha explained that her daughter Sarah had moved away years ago but had always kept the charm, a reminder of a kindness shown. After Sarah passed, Martha had found it amongst her belongings. The story of the lucky cat with the moon charm became a bedtime tale for Maya, a legacy of love passed down through generations. And then little Ginger had appeared, an orange kitten just like the cat in the stories. As Martha spoke, Maya returned with the water. She looked from her grandmother's tear-streaked face to Dr. Elias's stunned expression, a question in her eyes. Dr. Elias knelt beside her. "Maya," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "your grandmother has just told me something wonderful. It seems your little Ginger is connected to a cat I loved very much a long time ago, and to my wife Eleanor." Just then, Dr. Elias's phone buzzed in his pocket. It was his clinic assistant, her voice urgent. "Doctor, you need to come back. Ginger, he's taken a turn for the worse." A wave of cold dread washed over Dr. Elias. He had been so caught up in the revelation, he'd momentarily forgotten the fragile life hanging in the balance. "I have to go," he said, rising quickly. "Martha, Maya, I promise I'll do everything I can for Ginger." He raced back to the clinic, his mind a whirl of past memories and present fears. The connection to Eleanor, to Marmalade, made saving Ginger all the more critical. It felt like a chance to heal an old wound, to honor a cherished memory. When he arrived, Ginger was limp again, his breathing even shallower than before. Dr. Elias worked with a focused intensity, administering medication, checking vital signs, his decades of experience, pouring into the effort to save this tiny creature, who had in a few short hours become so much more than just another patient. He explained to Maya, who had followed him anxiously, in simple terms, what he was doing, how he was trying to help Ginger's little body fight. The fight for Ginger's life was also, in a way, a fight to keep a precious connection to his past alive. Hours passed. The clinic grew dark outside, the only light spilling from the examination room where Dr. Elias fought for Ginger. Maya, refusing to leave, had fallen asleep in a chair in the waiting room, her small face still streaked with dried tears, her hand clutching the crayon drawing. Martha had called, her voice anxious, and Dr. Elias had reassured her as best he could, promising updates. Finally, as dawn approached, Ginger stirred. A tiny, weak meow escaped him. His eyes, though still dull, focused for a moment on Dr. Elias's weary face. His breathing was steadier, his temperature normalizing. The crisis had passed. Relief, profound and overwhelming, washed over the veterinarian. He gently stroked Ginger's head, a tired smile gracing his lips. Later that morning, a much-recovered Ginger was nestled in a warm incubator, purring softly as Maya, her eyes shining with joy, watched him. Martha had come to the clinic, her relief palpable. As they sat together, drinking coffee Dr. Elias had brewed, Martha shared more. She and Eleanor had been childhood friends, losing touch as adults until Eleanor moved to Northwood with her young veterinarian husband. They had reconnected at the library. Martha confessed that her daughter Sarah had found Marmalade, Dr. Elias's lost cat, not long after he disappeared. He'd been injured, likely by a car. Sarah, a teenager at the time, had nursed him back to health, but he'd been too traumatized to venture far again, and had lived out his days as her beloved indoor companion, the cat with the lucky moon charm. Ginger, she explained, was from a litter born to a stray cat in their neighborhood, a cat that bore a striking resemblance to the stories of Marmalade. It seemed in a way Marmalade's legacy lived on. Dr. Elias listened, a sense of wonder filling him. The threads of connection, so long unseen, were now brilliantly clear. This little kitten, brought in by a child with nothing but love and a drawing, had bridged a gap of decades of loss and of unspoken grief. It was more than just a saved life, it was a circle completed. He looked at Maya, her face alight as she whispered to Ginger. He looked at Martha, her eyes kind and understanding. The solitude that had clung to him for so long felt lighter. He hadn't just saved a kitten, he had found a connection, a story that wove his past into his present in the most unexpected way. The clinic, once a place of quiet professionalism and subtle loneliness, suddenly felt warmer, filled with a new, unspoken promise. He knew with a certainty that settled deep in his heart that Maya and Martha and little Ginger were now a part of his life, a newfound family brought together by the enduring spirit of a cat named Marmalade and the simple, powerful love of a child. If Ginger's story also touched your heart, leave a comment below telling us about your own four-legged companion. We'd love to read it. Weeks turned into months. Ginger, fully recovered and thriving under Dr. Elias's continued care and Maya's devoted attention, became a regular, joyful presence at Albright. Animal care. He would often be found curled up on a soft bed in Dr. Elias's office, or playfully batting at Maya's shoelaces as she helped tidy the waiting room after school. The clinic no longer felt quite so empty to Dr. Elias. The quiet was now punctuated by Maya's cheerful chatter and Ginger's contented purrs. Dr. Elias found himself looking forward to Maya's daily visits. He helped her with her homework, listened to her stories, and shared tales of his own life with Eleanor, tales he hadn't realized he still longed to tell. Martha, her health slowly improving with the support and companionship, often joined them for tea, her presence a comforting link to a past that now felt less like a source of sorrow and more like a foundation for a new beginning. The silver-framed photograph on Dr. Elias's desk still held its place, but now, when he looked at it, the sadness was tempered with a gentle warmth, a sense that Eleanor's kindness continued to ripple outwards, touching lives in ways he could never have imagined. He realized that true wealth wasn't measured in the fees he charged or the prestige of his clientele, but in these simple, profound connections. The payment Maya had offered, that faded crayon drawing, had been priceless, an invitation to open his heart again. It had reminded him that compassion, like the resilient spirit of an animal, could heal, could bridge divides, and could create family in the most unexpected of places. He learned that sometimes the smallest creatures and the purest hearts can lead us to our greatest redemptions. Why not share this video with a friend who loves animals as much as we do? Let's spread this chain of kindness. Dr. Elias often thought that the resilience of animals, their ability to trust and love again after hardship, was a powerful lesson for humans. Ginger, a tiny kitten who had faced death, now embodied joy and connection, a furry testament to second chances.